All right, welcome. Let's get down to it. This is another of the occult topics with the professor. We're getting back to this tarot studies. I'll be honest, this is my main focus in life right now. So I apologize for the 2-week wait. Actually, I just finished doing the lightweight unboxing, and I was explaining there. I'm working a weird schedule at work. Put my phone on silent. Working this weird schedule. It's only supposed to last 5 weeks. I think we're like week 6 or 7, but it's about to be over. But I've been working a lot of hours. 13 days on, 1 day off. That's why I've been doing these tarot correspondences like every couple of weeks, just due to the delay. However, before we go any further, first and foremost, welcome to Occult Topics with the Professor. Thank you for choosing to spend this time with me. We're about to get into it. We're going to do something. We're going to get into something that's going to do something. Today's topic on the tarot correspondence is the Lovers, which is number 6, right? Now, I just want to say this before we get it started, that I've noticed a definite impact on the nature of my dreams. The last card, which was the Hierophant, one of the dreams that stood out the most to me. I haven't even bothered to begin decoding it. I have been meditating on it, thinking about it. One of the ones that stood out the most, there was like, I don't know how to describe it. There was a floating like plateau, piece of earth that like pulled out from the ground, was floating. The bottom came down to a point. On top of the flat surface, there were 2 dogs, like all white. Like, I'm not really into dogs. I couldn't take species, but like Labradors or something. They didn't have like long shaggy hair, but they were real hairy, straight white. One facing this way, one facing the other way. Behind the 2 dogs facing those 2 directions, like a cityscape. And the buildings successively went higher and higher till in the center there was a real tall skyscraper that made the pinnacle, but it came out to a pyramid shape. And that one stood out the most to me. But overall, just the dreams and downloads have been incredible. And I've noticed that just having reached card number 6 is that the tarot and Kabbalah definitely go hand in hand. Both are instruments for receiving. And I think that that's important, because it's not so much that, while we do have something to contribute to things like the tarot and Kabbalah, because they're both growing documents. It's not static. Overall, we are to receive, because hundreds of thousands, if not millions before us, have put energy into these same symbols. And so these are the downloads we receive. And in return, the download, the receiving aspect being feminine, since we're talking about the Lovers, and then what we give back in terms of our personal revelations, not so much that it's going to be something nobody's ever thought of before, but possibly due to the time, the age, and where we're at currently, we have something to add to the layers of understanding. So that's the active aspect of the Lovers. So just right there, which I didn't plan on pointing out, I see the significance of the Lovers, which we know is like a Gemini aspect, which also represents the pillars. We see the Great Mother in the background with the sun. Lots of fireness going on. So without further ado, let's get it cracking. Now, what I do have is another book that I'm going to weave into. And I'll say this, there are certain books that, if you've been following this series, when I began, I was using the Llewelyn Book of Correspondences. Tough. I've kind of bagged up on it just because for me, I know it's there, I know what it does, and especially due to my time constraints, releasing these videos every couple of weeks, I've kind of gotten away from it. There might be a couple others that I haven't really used that I'm listing, but that is, again, the point of research and study. You might find that you start off relying heavily on one book, and you might get away from it, not because it didn't serve its purpose, but because you know the purpose that it truly serves. And when you need it, you know it's there. But hold on, I want to go get this other book that I just got, which is a Richard Cavendish book. You heard? Richard Cavendish and Tarot. So I'm going to find a way to weave that in. I know that last week I weaved in the well, not last week, a few weeks ago, weaved in the Barbara G. Walker, which has been nothing but fire. So we're going to work it out. Give me one moment. All right, let's do it. Now, I just got this Richard Cavendish book on the Tarot. Anything by Richard Cavendish is fire. I just got it. I haven't even read through it. Richard Cavendish. We're gonna read through it and hopefully. No, let me turn some of the light on. It's kind of dark. All right. In the beginning, the earth was dark and without form, and God said, "Let there be light." So this is the Richard Cavendish joint. The title is just Tarot, or is it the Tarot? The Tarot, Richard Cavendish. So I'm going to weave this book in. I am going to begin with the Barbara G. Walker, sipping on some scissor. Let's do, let's get some good mood music going. I'm going to get Ganesha back in the building. Some Om Gan Ganapataye Namaha. All right, can't never go wrong with Ganesha in the background. Now, what I did was I had marked my place in this book using my lover's card that I pulled it out. But I can kind of guess where we kind of left off at. Okay, we're going to start off. I'll pick up right here, I guess. Yeah, I'll pick up right here. This is Barbara G. Walker's book, The Secrets of the Tarot, Origins, History, Symbolism. Let me just stop before I begin, because I'm ready to dive in. Thank you for spending this time with me. I know how valuable time is. What's up, bud? Okay. Am I bothering you? No. Are you going to the restaurant? Yeah. Oh, okay. I just want to say thank you for spending this time with me. I know how valuable time is in this Western society where everything's moving kind of fast. Before we get started, I just want to say, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, share, definitely comment. I appreciate the feedback I've gotten so far, and it's helped me in terms of some book recommendations. Oh, and I'll be doing a book giveaway soon. Might even give one away doing this. As a matter of fact, I definitely will. At some point, I'm going to go get a book to give away. We're going to begin with Barbara Walker's The Secrets of the Tarot, Origins, History, and Symbolism by Barbara G. Walker. I'm going to pick up on page 27, which is talking about the elementals. Barbara G. Walker is a good author in the aspect that she will give you the origins of a symbol. And truthfully, at this day and age we live in, most symbols originate back to a feminine aspect. And in a lot of ways, symbols are, well, I won't say they're all feminine in that they receive, because they also give. They're also active as well as passive. But the more research you do, you'll find out that You go back beyond 2,000 years and it was the goddess and not the god. But we know that when it's goddess, it didn't mean woman in the physical gender sense. It meant active or passive, positive or negative, and not negative in the sense of bad or positive in the sense of good. We're talking electrical charges, we're talking currency. That's why it said receive and then give, or active and passive. Those are the best ways to describe the negative and positive aspects. And that's what I love about Barbara G. Walker. Any book you get by her, must have. So I'm gonna pick up on page 27, Elementals, and it says here, Tacticus, Tacitus said, all the barbarian tribes of Europe regarded Mother Earth as the all-ruling deity to whom all else is subject and obedient. Heathen funerary prayers, let me turn Ganesh down a little taste. It says here, heathen funerary prayers were even copied into Christian epitaphs, such as Sesepe terra tuo corpus de corpora sumptum, accept, O earth, this body that was taken out of your body. In like manner, Hindu priests addressed a dead man, go, seek the earth, that wise and kind mother of all. O earth, rise up and do not hurt his bones. Be kind and gentle to him. O earth, cover him as a mother covers her infant with the skirts of her garment. I like that. That's a nice prayer for somebody that's making a transition. Everywhere in the world, burial was conceived as a return to the same womb that gave life. And that makes sense because the womb is, you've heard, I don't know, you should have heard the term by now, from the womb to the tomb. And tombs represent wombs in terms of darkness. Once you get on this path, you understand that reincarnation isn't just real. It's actually just one of the consistent facts in this human existence. Matter and energy cannot be destroyed. It's only recycled and redistributed, which is why this said, like, we're stardust, we're children of stars. You're as old as the universe, believe it or not. American Indians said all people and all animals emerged in the beginning from the ionic hole of the earth, just like a child being born from its mother. The place of emergence is the womb of the earth. Like gypsies, American Indians believed that after death, they would re-enter the mother's body and be born again. Medieval scholars believed in 4 classes of elemental spirits, which were pre-human races, having emerged long ago from the mountainous womb of the mother on her 4 primordial rivers of paradise. They were water spirits called undines, fire spirits called salamanders, earth spirits called gnomes, and air spirits called sylphs. Celsus Compendium Maleficarum listed all of them as demons and witches. The first is the fiery, because these dwell in the upper air and will never descend. The second is the aerial, because these dwell in the air around us. The third is terrestrial. Some dwell in the fields and lead night travelers astray. Some dwell in hidden places and caverns. The fourth is the aqueous, for these dwell under the water in rivers and lakes. They raise storms at seas, sink ships in the ocean, and are more often women than men. Now, what you have to understand, a lot of these old texts, you might think that they were anti-magic, anti-women, things of that nature. But what you have to realize is this is a dangerous time to be alive. So some of these authors, I'm not saying that this person in particular that Barbara G. Walker quoted, but a lot of these authors, they gave information out in a way that kind of forced you to read in between lines. And real quick, I'll go on a quick tangent. In the previous weeks, I've stated my dissatisfaction with Arthur A.E. Waite and how he's very brief and he puts occult blinds in his information. However, this past week, just in meditating on the information, I did have somewhat of a realization in that I have to appreciate authors like A.E. Waite, who do give you the barest information, who do put in occult blinds and dead ends, because this is the nature of occultism, of this secret work, right? And by that, what I mean is it's not for the uninitiated. It's not for anybody unwilling to do the actual work. If you want to read something that has an A through Z on how to do it, and then even in the A through Z, it has a step 1, 2, 3 for A, a step 4, 5, 6 for B. I call that baby bird syndrome, where you sit there and you kind of just keep your mouth open and expect somebody to drop something regurgitated into your beak. So yes, I do have a different opinion. I know that he forces me to work, and the way he forces me to work, not just through meditation and contemplation, but is by getting these books. And so I can take bits and pieces from here and there, and I can fill in the blanks that he left. So let me get back to it. Medieval writers tried to classify different nations according to elemental spirits they worship, following classical authors who said, for example, the Egyptians worshiped water, the Persians worshiped fire, and so on. Yet, most scholars agree that human beings combined all the elements in themselves, so that within the small compass of his body, he, man, might bestow under the requirements of nature the whole energy and substance of the elementals. Remember, the tarot cards are known as a book. You are a living book. So just keep that in mind when you read these things. It talks about nature and the elements. All these things apply to you, your body, and your mind. You are the book that is sealed with 7 seals being your chakras. So all these elements are represented in the tarot: earth, air, water, fire. Every act of shuffling that deck brings spirit down and gets spirit involved, and that's what's shuffling the deck. That deck represents you as the fool in your journey. So I just wanted to point that out. Let's go back. Again, let me go back. I'll read that last one again. I forget why I made the connection to books, but it says here, yet most scholars agreed that human beings combine all the elements in themselves, so that within the small compass of his body, he, man, might bestow under the requirements of nature the whole energy and substance of the elements. Again, this idea could be traced back to the worship of Kali, who gave water to create the bloodstream, fire for the vital heat, earth for flesh, and air for breath. Even the Bible agrees that flesh is clay, that the soul is breath, Ezekiel 37:9. Among patriarchal Brahmins, a father pretended to give his newborn children the soul by breathing in his face 3 times. The human temperament came from Latin temperare, to mix the elemental humors of the body. The mixture was never quite even. A predominance of blood gave a sanguine or bloody temperament of phlegm, a phlegmatic or earthly one, of bile, of melancholic or watery one, of ether, an ethereal or airy one. Similarly, creatures of suit cards in tarot layouts were considered indicative of elemental characters. The court cards of the 4 suits represented persons of appropriate temperament. In the trump suit, the goddess temperance was shown mixing temporary, the elements in her vessels, which also drew symbolism from the tantric notion of sexual union as emerging like pouring of water into water. At some point, there was an attempt to Christianize the tarot suits as emblem of the 4 Grail hollows, which was listed in the 12th century as 1, the Holy Grail, Christ's chalice of the Last Supper; 2, the lance with which the mythical Saint Longinus pierced Christ's side; 3, the paten or platter from which the disciples ate the Paschal lamb; and 4, King David's legendary sword of the Spirit. However, the Grail hollows themselves were quite unchristian, having begun as monkish revisions of Celtic pagan elemental symbols. The four treasures of the de Danann, of the Tuatha de Danann. Whenever I hear Tuatha, I think of Robert Jordan and his series of Wheel of Time. Tuatha were like, in his book, they were like essentially gypsies. People of the goddess Diana, Dana, D-A-N-A, that is Danish colonists of Iron Age Ireland. Their four treasures were: 1, the cauldron of regeneration; 2, the spear of Lugh; 3, the stone of fall or stone of sovereignty and Omphalos in the sacred grove of Tara; and 4, the sword of Nuada. Now you see these essentially are cups, wands, these are all of the symbols of the tarot, or more especially, you could say they're all symbols of the elements apply to tarot. So you can see the connection that the church had to make, because all of these traditions, especially in the Bible, were adopted from so-called pagan tradition. The so-called signs of the four evangelists were also stolen from pagan elemental symbolism. The serpent stood for water, the lion for fire, the bull for earth, and the eagle or angel for air. In Egypt, there were 4 animal-headed spirits who guarded the 4 corners of the temple or tomb, called the 4 children of Horus. Similarly, the Bible's 4 rivers of paradise were copied from the elemental streams which, in tantric tradition, flowed from the goddess's body. 1, water; 2, wine or blood for fire; 3, honey for earth; and 4, milk for air. These determined ancient India's ideas of elemental colors: blue for water, red for fire, yellow for earth, white for air. In other words, what are known as the primary colors, from which all other colors are made by mixing. It is interesting to note that the Bible placed 2 of these elemental streams in Palestine, the land of milk and honey. So you see, like I was just saying, a lot of these traditions are borrowed from other traditions. I was joking online the other day that the Bible is a book of plagiarism, but not so. That was a joke. It's not so much a book of plagiarism. There's only one story to tell. So any new religion, any whatever you get, it's going to be a remix of something that's came before with a little something that this current incarnation is going to need. Where was I? It is interesting to note that the Bible placed 2 of these elemental streams in Palestine, the land of milk and honey, whereas the other 2 came from the body of the Savior, when pierced, gave forth blood and water, John 19:34, and his blood was also wine indicative of fire. The Vedic gods lived on Mount Meru, a 4-sided pyramid built of elemental forces when the universe was young. The south face of the mountain was made of blue lapis lazuli or sapphire, representing the water element, whose sacred river flowed from its summit, the navel of waters, guarded by a majestic and benevolent goddess. The west face was made of ruby, and its river was fire, lava, or blood, and wine. The north face was gold, and its river was honey, a substance sacred to the earth goddess in every ancient tradition. It was a Hindu marriage custom to dab the bride's genitalia with honey as she began her honeymoon. I never thought about that. I read somewhere else about the relation of the honeymoon, but that's a good one. Let's read that again. It was a Hindu marriage custom to dab the bride's genitals with honey as she began her honeymoon. Loved ones are still called honey, and marriages are still solemnized with the ancient earth symbol of a ring of gold. The east face of the holy mountain was made of silver, crystal, or diamond. Its river was milk, the food of infants, and also of toothless elders approaching death. Here began the popular Indo-European fairy tale notion of the journey to death or paradise as a climb up a crystal mountain to a pinnacle of rebirth, the fairy queen's palace. Some said this magic mountain of the gods lay among the peaks of the Himalayas, which is why Germanic Aryans continued to call the heaven mountain Himmel, which is related to Heimdall. Then top of the mountain is also the pineal gland. Tantrics, for centuries, Eastern sages built a symbol system relating to the elements and the heaven mountain to the four stages of life, both individual life and the life of the universe, which passed through four great aeons called yugas. This was the basis for Greek philosophers' notions of the four world ages. Tarot suits might as well have been used as visual aids to explain this ancient symbol system. Now that I never thought of, that the yugas were actually a correspondence to different elements. The Tantric sages said the first age of life is ruled by the water element, Venus, known as Sambhoga, the age of love, pleasure, emotional attachments, the period of childhood, when each human being is socialized by affection and sensual contact, chiefly with the mother. Yeah, because even Jung and Freud agree that most people's sexual fetishes come from either being on the breast too long or not being on the breast enough, not getting enough hugs, getting too many hugs. So I can see how childhood is associated with the mother, earth, etc. Love, pleasure, emotional attachments. It says Hindu gods lived in eternal bliss on the lap of the mother, for their mountain home had a feminine gender, as most Himalayan peaks still have. The real name of Mount Everest, for example, is Chomo Long Ma, goddess mother of the world. God's magic blood, which kept them young forever, was blue because it came from the spring of Sambhoga. Sambhoga spelled Sambhoga. Therefore, blue bloods once meant gods, and that would explain why the Hindu gods are all blue-black, right? And later it became a painted blue. Porphyry wrote that the creator of the visible world, like the Hindu gods, had a dark blue complexion. The Tantric tradition continued to influence medieval alchemists who believed in a blue elixir of immortality, the quinta essentia, or fifth element. This wonderful quintessence was supposed to control the other elements, like the philosopher's stone. So it was sometimes equated with Tarot's fifth suit, the major arcana, the fifth suit being the Hierophant. The second age of light, ruled by the fire element, was nirmana, the process of building, the restlessness, self-development. Now, nirmana can be equated to, I guess you could say, like your 20s. So the first is, like let's say, let's do it in tens. Most likely it would be in 15s. 15, yeah, let's do it in 15s. It could even be done in 25s. That would give you 100 years of age. I'm gonna say tens because usually in ancient times, people on average didn't live that long. But we'll say 10. So the first 10 years of life, that is the stage of Sambhoga. The second phase, which is 10 to 20. Yeah. Hey, bud.
I didn't have any chapsticks, so.
Okay.
Is there any left?
Not in here. Want me to find you some?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Give me a moment. All right. Bear with me for a moment. Let me hook my son up. Let me pause this joint. All right, let me find you some chapstick, bud.
Right.
All right, let's get back to it. Had to hook my buddy up. Anybody's been following me for a while, especially on Facebook, that my son, or YouTube, I did a lot of interviews on different YouTube channels. My son is always nearby. I really think he get that vibe, like, man, it's the old man trying to get down on YouTube without me, because he's usually in the background somewhere. Let's get back to it. We're talking about the yugas, or the second stage. And the first stage is Samboga, which is love, passion, all things earthy and material. The second age of life, ruled by the fire element, was Nirmana, the process of building, the restlessness, self-developing, power-seeking activities of early adulthood. So I said 10 years. We could even say 15, so 15 to 30. Yeah. So we'll say the first 15 years would be the first yuga of your life, or elemental earth. Then we have fire. Uh, the Tarot suit of wands, fire, still carries the same connotation of power seeking, empire building, mercantile activity, establishment of a family, and a niche in the world. The suit of wands was said to be governed by Mars and identified with the sacred fire of sexual desires. So sex is still an act of it. This is part of it, but I guess it would be more focused, more intense. The third age of life, ruled by the earth. Oh, so I was wrong. The first element was not earth. What was that? Oh, the first element is water, which makes sense because you come from the womb, right? Okay, so the first element was water, sexual fluids, The next would be, this next one is earth. Or was it fire? Let me stop freestyling and get back to the information. Okay, the third age is also set water, then fire. The third age is earth, and it was Artha, wealth, the same root word we give to earth, Artha, earth, to other Indo-European languages. And the goddess variously named Eartha, E-R-T-H-A, H-R-E-T-H-A, Hertha, Eartha with the U, Erda, E-R-D-A, and so on. This was the age of full maturity, material success, golden harvest, the glowing autumn of life, a river of honey symbolized by the sweetness of fulfillment. Artha has an obvious connection to the Tarot suit of pentacles, governed by Mother Earth, Terra Mater, the giver of riches. Every card of the suit was in the same way concerned the money and property. Every card of the suit was in some way concerned, I think she meant to say, with the money and property. To own earth or real estate was the ultimate basis of all wealth under feudalism. So Gypsy's identification of money with earth was not at all unreasonable. The fourth age of life, ruled by the element air, was moksha, liberation, or the art of dying. In old age, the enlightened one would commence mystical preparations to send the soul soaring free on the air like a bird. In fact, bird used to be synonymous with a dead ancestor. Bird's eye view. Which is why Greeks and Romans took so many omens and auguries from flying birds. They thought all birds were ghosts bearing messages from the spirit world. A person who learned the power of Kundalini, serpent power, could understand the language of birds. This was much used in Greek myth and in medieval fairy tales. Egyptian hieroglyphs gave the Ba, soul, the form of a bird, and the great goddess as a death crone, the form of a vulture, bearing the flail of authority. As the grandmother of the gods, she carried souls into the upper airs. Isis, as a vulture, displayed in each claw the ankh or cross of life. Thus, the Tarot suit or swords or air, governed by Jupiter, traditionally spoke of death or disaster, but with the implication of change or transformation from one stage to another. The sages pictured time on the endless cycle around the holy mountain. on both the individual and the cosmic scale. The end of one cycle was the beginning of the next. Many cycles were divided into 4 parts in addition to the cycles of human life. There were the 4 ages of mankind, the 4 seasons, the 4 quarters of the moon, the earth, and the zodiac, the 4 winds and 4 cardinal directions, and 4 suits of tarot. So we see this continuous succession of the number 4 going back in time, which can be corresponded to not only just to tarot, but to the 4 seasons, the 4 phases of the moon, the 4 major phases of the moon, so on and so on. It's no coincidence that the 15th century card game of triumphs, played by European nobility and condemned by the clergy, identified the 4 suits with qualities very like the tantric life stages of Sambhoga, Nirmana, Artha, and Moksha, namely pleasures, virtues, riches, and virginities. Virtue, deriving from the Latin ver, man, once connoted phallic symbolism like the scepter and wand. Virginity could refer to the ascetic life recommended for sages in the period of moksha. Such sages were believed to acquire siddhi, magic power, by constant meditation. Among other things, this meant knowledge of the elements and how they combined and recombined in different patterns to create different forms from matter. Let me see how much further y'all finish this chapter. Oh, not bad. We're gonna finish this chapter out. She has a nice little chart, symbols associated with holy mountains. So I'm gonna finish this, and then we're gonna move on to the book. Where was I? Let's go back. Such sages were believed to acquire siddhi, magic power, by constant meditation. Among other things, this meant knowledge of the elements and how they combined and recombined in different patterns to create different forms from matter. A completely enlightened sage could not only determine his own form in the next life, he could even control transformations of matter, such as converting base metals into gold. This trick was performed by legendary Hindu Mahatmas and by King Midas, though the latter failed to control it properly. With these precedents, medieval alchemists ceaselessly and passionately searched for the secret. Only a few gave up seeking the fact and remained content with the symbol, taking the philosopher's stone as a metaphor for mystical enlightenment. This did not mean the enlightenment of Christianity. It meant Gnostic mysticism, which amalgamated the Stoic doctrine of the elements with tantric vision of the holy mountain, where both male and female principles govern each element. That ties in perfectly to the topic of the lovers. I know we haven't really got specifically into the lovers card yet, but I have to continue to read this book so we can get caught up, because I know that Barbara G. Walker is going to drop some good information. It's definitely going to apply. So I'm going to continue to read this book until I'm caught up on the actual card. But you can see here that she's weaving in and out of all the suits, all the different major Trump, and so forth. Where was I? Okay. She says here it meant Gnostic mysticism. This did not mean the enlightenment of Christianity. It meant Gnostic mysticism, which amalgamated the Stoic doctrine of the elements with the tantric vision of the holy mountain, where both male and female principles govern each element. Each of the 4 elemental gods was paired with his Shakti goddess, without whom he was powerless to act, for the very definition of Shakti was power. Tarot suits could be laid out in the formation of the holy mountain, showing each face with its 2 deities, king and queen, at the summit atop rows of 3, 4, and 5 cards. This elemental design could be used for fortune telling, but it also explained graphically a rather subtle philosophical system. Comprehension of the system was necessary in the Gnostic view to of polytrosis liberation, an idea almost identical to the tantric sages' moksha. Worship of the elements didn't stop with the passage of classical civilization. The ethical system and mystical beliefs of Stoicism remain tied to the Stoicheia, or elements in which everyone believed, including churchmen. The symbols were embedded in the Tarot. Christian mystics studied the classical writers and tried to pour their beliefs into the mold of contemporary orthodoxy, but the fit was poor. As one historian put it, Stoic ethics are self-sufficing. They proceed from nature, so to speak, and do not rely upon grace. They have no need of a doctrine of redemption. There is nothing in common between them and Christianity, save the elements it once borrowed from them. However, Gnostic sects maintained the pagan traditions, especially in Sicily, Spain, and the south of France, where many Coffrets, Gnostiques, Gnostic reliquaries, and other non-orthodox cult objects have been discovered. The Stoic idea of ultimate dissolution of the universe into its component elements figured prominently in the medieval doomsday myths, which even included the ancient opinion that doomsday will be brought on by the goddesses' disgust at men's and God's cruel, destructive behavior. The whole cycle of romance is focusing on the goddess as many, M-I-N-N-E, love. That's wild, because Min is a character in one of my favorite books. That's the goddess of love. I didn't know that. Love carried a strong suggestion that neglect of her worship would bring on catastrophe of nature, or even of the spiritual climate system, symbolized by the wastelands like Terragast. I mentioned the book I referenced that I said Min is a character in is Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time. At some point, I'm definitely going to do a breakdown of his books, because he tapped in that entire series. I believe it's like 13 books as a channel. Robert Jordan passed away before the completion of the series, and Brandon Sanderson took over. It's a fictional book, but the entire book is nothing but channels. I've already begun breaking down the main characters and the gods that they link to. Like I said, he mentions the Tuatha, and they are essentially deities in Ireland. He has Perun from German, mostly Greek and German, but as you know, correspondence, but it just caught my attention. I thought I'd mention it. Wheel of Time. Get your butt out the kitchen. You know you're supposed to be in there. You're doing the most. Lay down, man. All right. Okay. It had already happened in the barren land called Arabia Deserta. According to Eastern mystics, Islam had deserted the mother. So the mother had deserted the earth, or made it a desert, right? When they saw the desiccated country, crusaders were inclined to believe the mystics' explanation. Troubadours threatened the same dire fate in Britain and continental Europe when worship of the goddess declined. A wrong against a feminine being and a plundering of nature were perpetrated. The origin of the trouble was looked upon as an offense against the fairy world, i.e., against nature. The offenders were Christians who diabolized and persecuted rival religions. It is interesting and perhaps significant that Christian salvation was supposed to save individuals from the horrors of doomsday, and only a select few individuals at that. For Thomas Aquinas and other theologians insisted that the vast majority of human beings would be damned, whereas the heathen salvation was supposed to save the whole earth. The old familiar heathen slash stoic slash Gnostic view did seem more generous. But I think of now, if that's the case, that abandonment of the divine feminine brings about a desiccation or a desert. Uh, the case could be made tying in what we call, this global warming, because if Islam abandoned the female and that produced deserts, then the Christianization of the earth, which is very much about downplaying the feminine aspect, global warming might be a cause of that. Or it could just be an alchemical formula that if you ignore this aspect of your being, this is, A leads to B. Y being the unknown, A, B being the variables that describe the unknown, right? So we have here symbols associated with the holy mountain, elements: water, feminine; fire, male; earth, female; air, male; faces of Mount Meru: south, lapis lazuli, sapphire; west, ruby; north, gold; east, diamond, crystal, silver; sacred rivers: water, wine, blood; honey, milk. Now, water being water, fire being wine or the blood, earth being honey, milk being air. Now, remember, a lot of people accuse Christianity of cannibalism, right? Because Christ said, "This bread is my body, this wine is my blood." What we see here, that what he was really doing was, let's see, fire, which is the blood, which is male, and then the earth would be the bread, which is honey, which is a female. So we see here that it was nothing but saying, referring to the lovers, masculine and feminine energy, you know. Uh, Tantric primary colors: blue, red, yellow, white. Seasons: spring for sowing, summer for growth, autumn for harvest, winter for death. And those, of course, correspond to water, fire, earth, air. So each category I read is going to fall into first water, then fire, then earth, and air. So it says here ages: childhood, which is water; youth, which is fire; earth, which is maturity; air, which is old age; tantric life stages: samhoga, nirmana, artha, and moksha. Samhoga being pleasure, nirmana being building, artha being riches, moksha being liberation. Tarot life areas: love, which corresponds to water. We got the Lover's card. Power, which corresponds to fire, with his mask, which is masculine. So love and the lovers, although it's a pair, love is a feminine quality. Power, which is fire, is masculine; wealth, which is the earth, is feminine; and death is male. Tantric symbols: cup, scepter, ring, sword; cup being water, scepter being fire, ring, of course, being earth, and the air is sword. Playing card suits: heart represents water, clubs represent fire, diamonds represent earth, spades represent air. Triumphs: pleasure, virtues, riches, virginities. Elemental spirits: undines represents water, salamanders fire, gnomes earth, sylphs air. Roman deities would be Venus for water, Mars for fire, Terra Mater or Sybil for earth, and Jupiter for air. Celtic treasures: cauldron of regeneration is water, spear of Log is fire, stone of fall is earth, sword of Nuwata is air. Moon Sabbath: new moon is water, waxing quarter is fire, full moon is earth, waning quarter is air. Greek world ages: gold would be water, silver would be fire. Bronze is earth, iron is air. Zodiacal signs: Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio is water, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius is fire. Of course, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn is earth, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, air. Body components: fluids represents water, Heat, of course, represents fire. Solids represents earth, and breath represents air. Well, this is a great correspondence right here, if you're really about that work. Bile represents water, blood represents fire, phlegm represents earth, breath represents air. Evangelical signs: serpent, water; lion is fire; bull is earth; eagle or angel is air. Grail hallows, grail, holy grail is water; the spear is fire; the paten is earth; and sword of spirit is air. Pagan Christian festivals: May Eve or Beltane, it represents water; Lammas Eve, Lug Nasad is fire; Halloween represents earth; and Candlemas Imbolg represents air. We're going to stop right here so we can move on. And then we come to the Wheels of Beginning, which is page 35, and the Secrets of Tarot, Origins, History, and Symbolism. We'll be picking up there next week, page 35. So I think next what I'm going to do is, because let's get into some tarot symbolism. So for that, I'm going to go to Arthur A.E. Waite. Let's see what Arthur has to say about the lovers. Arthur. Okay, here we go. I need a highlighter here. That's all good. Give me an excuse to read it again. The lovers or marriage. This symbol has undergone many variations, as might be expected from a subject. An 18th century form by which it first became known to the world of archaeological research, it is really a card of married life, showing father and mother with their child placed between them. Oh, see, I thought that was a great mother. That's the child, huh? The pagan Cupid above, in the act of flying his shaft, is of course misapplied emblem. The Cupid, I'm looking for the okay. The Cupid of love beginning rather than of love in its fullness, guarding the fruit thereof. The card is said to have been entitled Simulacrum Fidei, the symbol of conjugal faith, for which the rainbow as a sign of the covenant would have been a more appropriate concomitant. The figures are also held to have signified truth, honor, and love. But I suspect that this was, so to speak, the gloss of the commentator moralizing. It has these, but it has other and higher aspects. So again, what I said at the beginning, I do have more respect for Waite and how he teaches, in that he's going to force you to do the work. And he drops some clues here in terms of how to continue to do the work. Let me see if he has anything else on this card, the lovers, which he does. Here it is, the pictorial key to the tarot. 6, the lovers. The sun shines in the zenith, and beneath is a great winged figure with arms extended, pouring down influences. In the foreground are 2 human figures, male and female, unveiled before each other, as if Adam and Eve, when they first occupied the paradise of the earthly body. Behind the man is a tree of life, bearing 12 fruits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And the tree of knowledge of good and evil is behind the woman. the serpent is twining around it. So we know these to be biblical. Most know these as biblical symbols. This is also a reference to Kabbalah. Now you see that the tree of life contains 12 pieces of fruit, 12 jewels, 12 months, 12 zodiac. The tree of knowledge contains the serpent, knowledge being gnosis, serpent representing kundalini. Now the tree actually has 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of fruit. No, has 5 pieces of fruit. Well, the weight card, there's only 5 pieces of fruit. And in the Bota, there's 5. Okay, the weight card has 4 visible pieces of fruit behind the woman, whereas the Bota deck has 5. But I think it's more, I think the 5 is more appropriate, because whenever I think of the 5, I think of the 5-pointed star. Says here, behind the man is a tree of life bearing 12 fruits, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil is behind the woman. The serpent is twining round it. The figure suggests youth, virginity, innocence, and love before it is contaminated by gross material desires. This is, in all simplicity, the card of human love, here exhibited as part of the way, the truth, and the life. It replaces by recourse to first principles the old card of marriage, which I have described previously, and the latter follies, which depicted man between vice and virtue. In a very high sense, the card is a mystery of the covenant and Sabbath. So this gives you something to chew on. The covenant between God and man, and Sabbath, which is the 6th day or Saturday, which goes from labor to rest, because on the 6th day, God rests on Sabbath. And Sabbath was sacred. So that gives you something to research. You can biblically, you can look up the covenant, the mystery. It says here, the card is the mystery of the covenant and of Sabbath. Lately, I've been doing a lot of research on Sabbath and Saturday. So I'm gonna see if that all ties in over the course of the next week or two, depending on when I'm able to do this again. But I'll get my studying in and I'll make these connections, which is what I would expect somebody else to do. The suggestion, now Saturn is represented by Binah. Let's get back to it because it's almost 5. So I got about an hour and a half to get through some of this information. My house is going to wake up for sure by 6:30. The suggestion in respect of the woman is that she signifies that attraction towards the sensitive light, which carries within it the ideas of the fall of man, but she is rather the working of a secret law of providence than a willing and conscious temptress. I would look up the word providence. I wish I had that book out here, The Origin of Words. It is through her imputed lapse that man shall arise ultimately, and only by her can he complete himself. The card is therefore in its way another intimation concerning the great mystery of womanhood. So again, we see that although this card has the pair of masculine and feminine, it is decidedly feminine, as love is a feminine aspect. And then we see here what A.E. Waite just said. I would look up providence. Providence is a goddess. The old meanings fall to pieces of necessity with the old pictures, but even as interpretations of the latter, some of them were of the order of commonplace and others were false in symbolism. Some of them were of the order of commonplace, and others were false in symbolism. Let's read that last sentence again, because I know that encoded in that is a love. The old meanings fall to pieces of necessity with the old pictures, but even as interpretations of the latter, some of them were of the order of commonplace and others were false in symbolism. So he found that the symbolism either to be in the order of being commonplace or something understood by all, possibly even on the level of the unconscious the collective unconscious, whereas he said others were false in symbolism. So for this, what I'm going to do throughout the week is I'm going to look up different aspects of the goddess, especially beginning with providence and then the covenant and Sabbath. But we got some good books coming up. I'm pretty sure Robert Wang is going to touch on this in more detail. Now, since they mentioned Sabbath, I wonder, before I go to Mystical Kabbalah, I'm going to touch on Robert Wang's Cabalistic Tarot, because I wonder if there's a connection to Bina and the lovers, right? So let's get to the lovers. This is, I'm going now to Philip Cooper's Teach Yourself Tarot, the quick and easy way. And let's see what he says about the lovers. For lovers only, for lovers only, only, for lovers only, for lovers only. He says here, synopsis of the lovers, a very important decision or choice when motives should be considered. Reliance on intuition rather than logic is advised. Now remember, intuition has been covered over the last couple cards. A decision made now will have far-reaching consequences. General description. Now, to me, that last line definitely describes marriage. A decision made now will have far-reaching consequences. General description. Adam and Eve stand naked looking up at an angel. Behind Adam is the tree of life. Behind Eve is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, on which is wrapped a snake. Innocent and unaware of each other's bodies, they have no physical contact with each other. They have yet to make the decision whether to eat the forbidden fruit, leave the garden of Eden forever, or stay as they are. And remember, this is not love in its fullness. This is love in its potential before the act of coitus or coitus interruptus. Let's see what Manly has to say. We're going to go to The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. And while we pausing, let me hold up this Ganesh. We got Ganesh in the building. We were moving obstacles around here. Okay. Manly P. Hall says the sixth numbered major trump is called Les Amoureux, the lovers. There are two distinct forms of this tarot. One shows a marriage ceremony in which a priest is uniting the youth and the maiden, Adam and Eve, in holy wedlock. Sometimes a winged figure above transfixes the lovers with his dart. That would be Cupid. So that's giving you an idea of what deities research. We're going to look up Cupid after this and Providence. The second form of the card portrays a youth and a female figure on either side. One of these figures wears a golden crown and is winged. Neither of these descriptions are in the boat or weight decks, while the others are tied in flowing robes of the Bacchante, spelled like Bacchante, Baccante. And on her head is a wreath of vine leaves. The maiden represents the twofold soul of man, spiritual and animal. The first is guardian, spiritual. The second is ever-present demon, animal. That brings to mind the Egyptians and the fact they put animal heads on human bodies. That's what kind of slowed up my reading. That's what came to mind. The youth stands at the beginning of mature life, the parting of ways, where he must choose between virtue and vice, the eternal and temporal. Above, in a halo of light, is the genius of fate, his star, mistaken for Cupid by the uninformed. Mistaken for Cupid. If youth chooses unwisely, the arrow of blindfolded fate will transfix him. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the arrow of the genius points directly to the figure of vice, thereby signifying the end of her path, thereby signifying that the end of her path is destruction. This card reminds man that the price of free will, or more correctly, the power of choice, is responsibility. We're going to stop right here and look up Cupid as well as Providence. What I'm going to use for this research is Judica Illis's Encyclopedia of Spirits, the ultimate guide to the magic fairies, genies, demons, ghosts, gods, goddesses. So first, let's look up. I guess I should go to Cupid first. Got a nice piece of power in this book. I doubt if it'll show up because of my bright light. When I keep this in here, it's the Sephirotic system. So first, I want to go. Let's go to Cupid, since Cupid is said to be the inaccurate description. But even in inaccuracy, you can find out. Even in what's said to be wrong, you'll find out what is right. So let's find Cupid. Oh, tell me. There's no way she doesn't have Cupid in this book. I reject that deposit. Cupid has to be under a different topic. I mean, a different spelling. No way Cupid's not in this book. What? Oh, wow. All right, let's move on to the next. I'm not going to hesitate. Time is a wasting. Let's see what Charles Russell Quartere and Patricia Turner has to say in the Encyclopedia of Ancient Deities. Let's go straight to Cupid. Wow, that's weird. I gotta find it in that book. You can't tell me Cupid isn't in that book. Okay, here's Cupid. Cupido. See Cupido Roman. See Amor Bridget Eros. Now there is the Cupra, Etruscan ancient goddess of fertility. She formed a triad with the fire god Tina and the goddess of wisdom Minerva. Her weapon is the thunderbolt. Etruscan came before Roman. So let's go look at, look up Amor Bridget Eros. Oh, that's who I should have looked up in her book was Eros. One moment, let me check something. Got a bunch of text messages. Oh man, I'm tripping. I'm sitting here zoning out, checking emails and shit. All right, my bad. My bad. Let's look up Eros. I sincerely apologize about that. You see how the phone is hypnotic? Man, I looked and seen all them emails and work shit. Something I shouldn't even looked at. But that shit straight enamored me. I was gone. And my apologies. All right, let's go to Eros. Greek Roman, also known as Amor, Roman, Cupid, Roman, god of love. Initially, Eros was born of chaos with Gaia and Tartarus, love and death. Later, he was known as the son of the goddess of love, Aphrodite, and either the god of war, Ares, or the god of fire, Hephaestus. From this lineage, his siblings are Anteros, Deimos, Enyo, Harmonia, Palor, and Phobos. There are renditions stating that his mother was Venus, Iris, or Ilithae. His father is variously named as Ares, Hermes, Mars, or Zeus. Eros pierces the hearts of gods and mortals with his gold-tipped arrows of desire. I think though that Cupid it applies, but in like a reverse sense, maybe as a misapplication. Often he has wings, usually carries his bow and arrow. He is the most splendid in appearance of all the gods. He is shown as a chubby infant or a handsome adult male. Eros, Tukama, Hindu. See also a Drastia, Aether, Amor, and Teros, Aphrodite, Eros, Cupid, Demos, Graces, and Harmonia. We're going to look up Amor. And then after Amor, we're going to rock over to Providence. Also known as Cupid, Cupido, Eros, Greek, boy god of love. He is the son of Venus and Mars or Mercury. Let's look up Providence real quick. And then we're gonna get back to the good part. We're gonna pick up Robert Lang. I glitched on y'all for a second, huh? Work shit. That's why I got Ganesha playing right now. I realized something about myself in that I have set myself up to succeed at a failure, which is work. So I'm working with Ganesh since I reached that understanding. I'm working with Ganesh because we all got to pay bills in one aspect or another. I want to put myself in a position to where I'm not concerned with 100 million. I don't need to be rich beyond all imaginings. I just need my time. And you see how swiftly I got sucked into that trap of work. I know that normally I'm at work at these hours. I thought about it like, damn, I ain't checked none of my emails. I ain't checked none of my text messages. And I instantly went right back to work. Oh my word. But it's all GOOD. I don't see Providence in here. I know that Providence is a goddess. Let's see if Judica drops anything on Providence. And we're going to look up Providence, and I'll look up Eros and all that stuff. Nekbet, Oshun. Okay, it's here. No. Maybe I'm tripping. that providence is a deity. Let's see. What we can do is look it up in these encyclopedia symbols. Let's see what providence represents. Oh, and Sabbath, Shabbat. This is gonna bother me because I know what I know. I think I'm just viewing it from a different angle than how I should be viewing it, because I'm certain that providence is associated with a deity, most likely one of these Greek deities. Now I'm going to J.E. Cyrilac's Dictionary of Symbols. I'm gonna move on and keep it pushing. But this is the nature of research. Most likely, whatever it is I'm searching for is going to hit me while I'm driving or doing some other mundane tasks, because my mind is going to be working in overtime to find it. Yeah, providence wasn't here either. So let's go to Robert Wang. Let's go to Robert Wang. Let's see what he has to say about the lovers. What is this? All right, here we go. See, it's definitely connected to Shabbat, Sabbath, which is it's a mirror image of the Hierophant and the path. The path of Zane, the lovers, the sixth key, path color orange, related sound, the natural, sign, Gemini, mutable air, understandable, meaning, sword or armor, simple letters, smell, esoteric title, the children of the voice, the oracle of the mighty God. We know that because Geminis are communicators, they're talkers. 32 paths of wisdom. The 17th path is the disposing intelligence, which provides faith, which is providence, which provides faith to the righteous, and they are clothed with the Holy Spirit by it. And it is called the foundation of excellence in the state of higher things. Now, before I go any further, I want to look up Zane in my Cabalistic Encyclopedia. Come here. Godwin's Cabalistic Encyclopedia. Yeah. And I put the number in there. So it says here Zane or Zayn, Z-A-Y-N, Z. It says with Sephiroth 4 through 9. So it does everything from Chesed down to Yesod collectively. Seventh letter of the Hebrew alphabet, transliterated as Z, spelled out Z-Y-N, sword, It has the number of 717 to 67, corresponds to Gemini, the 17th path between Bina and Geberon. It says here, and the Tarot trump, number 7, the Chariot. We're gonna look up because that's not. Let's see real quick. Is not the path between. This path leads from Bina to Tiferet. Okay. Okay, I got some learning to do. I'm still gonna look up Sabbath or Shabbat. I'm gonna move on. Okay, no, what? Let's look up 717. Did he mention those numbers also? It's a 6th key. Oh, he doesn't mention those numbers. Let's look it up anyway. Be not understanding the third Sephiroth. Doesn't give a lot of information there. It also does reply to Yebamiah, angel of the 4th quince of Cancer, angel by night of the 3 of Cups, Wyna, Goetic demon by night of 3rd decant of Gemini. That's worth looking up because we know that Gemini is definitely strongly associated with the Lover's card. But let's go back. Let's get back to it. Let's see what Robert Wayne has to say in Cabalistic Tarot, a textbook of mystical philosophy. Let me go back. 32 paths of wisdom. The 17th path is. Oh, I'm in the wrong place, pimp. Oh, it's the 17th path is disposing intelligence, which provides faith to the righteous, and they are clothed with the Holy Spirit by it, and it is called the foundation of excellence in the state of higher things. The path of Zane, the lovers between Bina and Tiferet, connects the pure consciousness from which form emerged with the central point of all manifestation. Now let me show you. Hopefully the glare won't be too vicious. Let me get it over here where you can see it. I'll show you that path. Oh, probably a better image in this book. There's Sid Vicious. Okay, well, the path is here. There's this path going from Bina all the way over here to Tiferet. Or on Mystical Kabbalah. Let's see. It looks like it's a little better here. Look at that glare. Oh man, I'm done with this mirror image shit. All right. The path of Zane, the lovers between Bina and Tiferet, connects the pure consciousness from which form emerged with the central point of all manifestation, a complexity which can barely be suggested by the images on a tarot card. It is perhaps for this reason, Ganesh, we've been an hour already, my nigga. Jeez Louise. It is perhaps for this reason that the design of the card has changed over the centuries. In most of the earliest versions, such as the Marseilles Tarot, it was called the Lover, singular, and showed a man between two women, above whom was a cupid with the poised arrow. Presumably, this single lover made no sense to later tarot artists, and in the 18th century, the card began to appear with two lovers and a uniting figure of some sort. Yet, the early concept of the lover is very profound. For this card does not represent the mundane love of two persons. It is rather the dualities of a single individual, because it's all about you. Nobody else. It's all about you. Willfully united in pursuit of divine love. Crowley's point that the card should really be called the brothers is well taken. In fact, the key's true meaning is embedded in its sign of the zodiac, Gemini, the twins. The brothers he's probably speaking of is Pollux and Troy, I think it is. What is it? Castor and Pollux, the twins. The dual energies which the lovers propose to unite are equal and opposite, i.e., twins. Uniting of these twins is a major step upwards towards the Godhead on the tree of life. The principle is that as divine energy surged across the abyss into manifestation, stable dualities were formed. The great work is a marriage of these dualities of manifestation, a return to primeval state. Thus, this path may be considered the aspect of the Garden of Eden, from which mankind was expelled, but to which it may earn re-entry by consciously dealing with what has been called the inner sun and moon. Now that's important, that this path is considered an aspect of the Garden of Eden from which mankind was expelled, but to which it may earn re-entry by consciously dealing with what has been called the inner sun and moon. So that's by doing your work and balancing these opposites, these different polarities within yourself. So I read that, and I'll be honest, I also reflect on the sign of the times we live in, where pronouns have become so important, whether you identify as he, him, she, her, they, them, their, it. Uh, in a lot of ways, that could be not in a lot of ways. That's just indicative of an imbalance between the masculine and feminine, the inability to synthesize or bring those two aspects into one, that now we have this confusion on the material plane as to gender, assigning gender, whereas this is most likely something that's going on in the etheric plane and possibly even above, not too far though, but definitely in the etheric, which is reflected in confusion going on down here. Where was I? The principle is that as divine energy surged across the abyss into manifestation, stable dualities were formed. Stable dualities. The great work is a marriage of these dualities of manifestation, a return to primeval state. Now, that marriage is also known as Hieros Gamos. That's the divine marriage of heaven and earth, man and woman, etc. It says here, thus, this path may be considered the aspect of the Garden of Eden from which mankind was expelled, but to which it may earn re-entry by consciously dealing with what has been called the inner sun and moon, silver and gold. The whole key to the great work is the uniting of the sun and the moon under Mercury, the planet ruling Gemini, Mercury being associated with the magician. In relating the symbolism to the path of the lovers, Case, which is Paul Foster Case, performed a fascinating exercise in gematria. He took the Hebrew title of the path from the 32 paths of wisdom and broke it down into its component parts. The path of Zayn is called the disposing intelligence, Ha Regesh, from which the following is derived. Hey means the, Oh, he broke. Okay. I don't know my Hebrew letters by heart, so I'm not even gonna butcher this. But he's basically saying that how the disposing intelligence. So what Paul Foster Case did was he took the word disposing intelligence, and then he took each Hebrew symbol and he broke it down with the following. He derived hey, which means the, and then the next symbol means the sun. Then the following is the moon, and then Shin is the man, or is fire. So disposing intelligence means sun, moon, fire. On the tarot card, the sun is the man, the moon is the woman, and the divine fire above the abyss is represented by the angel or Cupid. That's the fire. I mean, that's the yeah, fire, sun, moon, and fire. And who are the fiery ones for the angels? Let's look that up. The fiery ones. I should have my other Kabbalah books out here. I'm starting to get tired, but hey, we're gonna keep this thing cracking with the lights on. Seraphim. Yes, seraphim. Okay. At least I got that much right. So it says on the tarot card, the sun is the man, the moon is the woman, the divine fire above the abyss is represented by the angel or Cupid. In explanation of this, Case states that the sun is self-consciousness, while the moon is subconsciousness. These are both aspects of the one life breath, each working through half of the body. And when the solar and lunar currents of the life power are rightly perceived, rightly discriminated, and when their operation is kept in proper order, the personality of the man engaged in this practice becomes a free, unobstructed channel for the outpouring of cosmic life force. Case was discussing not the weight deck, but his own Bota deck, builders of the Adityan version. A correction of the earlier deck, which changed the symbolism little, but improved the drawing quality and eliminated the personified minor cards. And that's why I use the weight deck and the bolted deck. That's why I use these, because both stick to what is known as the traditional symbols. But you see that the bolted deck, which is to your right on the screen, is a little more expressive as opposed to the weight deck, because even in that, we do see the number 6, Roman numerals, the lovers. The same symbolism is essentially there, but there's subtle differences in the bolted deck. You see Zayn, you see the lovers, you see the Hebrew letter, you see the actual number 6, and so forth. Where was I? It says, I'm gonna start over. Case was discussing not the weight deck, but his own BOTA version. A correction of the earlier deck was changed the symbolism little, but improved the drawing quality and eliminated the personified minor cards. Thus, one would expect explanations of the card by weight and Case to be similar, even despite Waite's apparent caution about what he put into print. Such similarities, however, are few, and where Case considered this card one of dualities unified by the spiritual self, Waite merely emphasized its relationship to the Garden of Eden. He referred to Adam and Eve and to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but made no mention of spiritual alchemy in this card, which he called love, before it's contaminated by gross material desire. Adding that in a very high sense, the card is a mystery of the covenant and the Sabbath. And we covered that already word for word. One might well suggest that such comments drawn from his pictorial key to the tarot are so cryptic as to be almost useless to the serious student. But the real serious student is going to get more than one book. Where we at? The intention here is not to depreciate Wade, who must be represented for maintaining his oath of secrecy, but to point out the extent to which there are two explanations to every card, an exoteric one and an esoteric one. So here, Robert Wayne clearly appreciates the fact that Wade went out his way to stick to his obligations of secrecy. But at the same time, it's like, come on, man. You know, why would you even commit it to paper if you were going to be that obtuse, that vague? But hey, again, it's going to force you to do the work. And it says here in all versions of this key, no matter how it may be described or how different the design, the esoteric meaning is the same. They all mean the union of manifest opposites under the divine love of the supernals through Binah. It is, as Waite stresses, the Garden of Eden, but it is the garden from which the soul itself is expelled in manifestation and to which it may return. The same message is in Crowley's card, which shows the theme of union as an alchemical marriage of the component parts of the seeker. The Golden Dawn also represents the spiritual union, but with an important difference. The seeker works actively for this to come about. I agree with. You got to do the work. Even though you can meditate on this card, you can meditate and get the same downloads, but you got to do the work. Got to be active. That's where the masculine part comes in, right? And we're not talking gender when I say masculine. I'm saying the active aspect. What was that? It says here, the Golden Dawn also represents the spiritual union, but with an important difference. The seeker works actively for this to come about. The higher self descends to release the personality from bondage, recalling the idea encountered with the hanged man that while the personality believes itself to be the pursuer, it is actually the pursued. So you can look at this image as another difference. You may think that you are ascending or reaching for higher heights, but it's that aspect of yourself that actually, you may think you're pursuing this information, but there's actually an aspect of your higher self that is pursuing you to bring this information to you. That's both active and passive. That's the receptive, that's the masculine and feminine aspect represented by this card, which I think is dope. And I think that that's one way to explain how, even as we may find ourselves in a state of not knowing, I won't say ignorance or dead, you can find yourself in a state of not knowing and still make decisions that put you in place to succeed down the line. This is the union, not only between the active and passive aspects of yourself, but between the lower and higher aspects of self, of you pursuing this information and of the information pursuing you. So I think that's pretty dope. And it actually ties into what I was just saying about my job and how I allow it to consume me in some aspects, but I follow this path. I'm following this path out because I know that it's the decision that I made in a state that I believe to be not knowing, but at the same time, I made the decisions in a state of knowing the actual outcome. So whatever is going on, whether I stay at this job, whether tomorrow I hit the lottery for 17 mil, I have faith, or I have understanding in the knowing that I'm exactly where I need to be and doing exactly what I need to be doing. It says the legend of Perseus and Andromeda used to make this point contains some fascinating implications for the interpretation of this card. Now, remember, we're talking about looking up deities. So here we have Perseus and Andromeda. It says in the myth, Andromeda was the daughter of the king of the Ethiopians in Cassiopeia, who boasted that she was more beautiful than the Nereus, daughters of the sea gods Nereus. Now, I never knew that Andromeda was the daughter of Ethiopian king of Ethiopians. Remember in that last, not the last, but I believe it was the second Titans movie where Perseus saved Andromeda. She was Ethiopian. In anger, the Nereids complained to Poseidon, who flooded the land and then sent a terrible monster to inhabit it, which is the Kraken, right? The only way this monster could be vanquished was for the king's daughter, Andromeda, to be sacrificed to it, and she was thus tied to a rock on the shore. Perseus, however, who had just successfully taken the head of Medusa, saw Andromeda and fell in love. He wanted to marry her, which the father insisted was only possible if the monster was slain. So Perseus killed the monster, but Andromeda's uncle nevertheless tried to prevent the marriage by sending attackers against the hero. Perseus, in turn, displayed the frightful head of Medusa and turned his adversaries to stone, after which he and Andromeda lived more or less happily ever after. So this is another source to research Perseus and Andromeda for a better understanding of the tarot deck. However, in one ancient interpretation of the story, Perseus, Andromeda, and her father, mother, and the monster were brought into the sky, where they became constellations of the same name, the Andromeda constellation, right? In Cabalistic terms, this could be taken to mean that the actions of Perseus, the spiritual self, resulted in the return of all participants to the sky, i.e. Godhead. While that explanation may seem a bit strained, such mythologies are part of the general culture at the time of the Hermetic Order of the Dawn and were often interpreted in esoteric terms. The stress of the Golden Dawn card is on the extent to which the process of this path is a very active one. For the self-control and will, Mercury, which directs the movement and integration of the opposites, is not passive, as the other cards tend to suggest. Perseus here has the same fiery, dynamic, and inspirational qualities ascribed to the serpent. Got to look up Perseus before this is over, but I don't have much time. I got like 45 minutes left, and I got to get to this Paul Foster case. Another indicator of activity on this path is the attribution of the sword to Zane. Now remember, this path goes from Bina to Tifereth. Bina being Saturn, Saturn being connected with the sickle. Zane even resembles a scythe. I'm just saying, keep that in mind. It says to the sword to Zane. This is an instrument of active division and separation. It is a sword of perception which cuts to the core of things and defines it clearly. Insofar as such perception is attributed to Zane, to it is also attached the sense of smell, thus implying not only the most direct, but also the most subtle of awareness and responses. While the sword is rarely found in this tarot key, it is very common in our chemical representation of the same theme as, for example, the 11th key of Basilius Valentius, the 17th century alchemist. In his illustration are two female twins, each mounted on a lion and holding a figure of the sun and the moon. Behind them is a man in armor, another meaning for Zane, and holding the sword. The caption reads, the twins, sun and moon, are united by the conjunction which seems to be death. So we understand that the consummation of this marriage requires a death, an eclipse. Indeed, to successfully pursue this path across the abyss means the death even of one's own higher self. Now, this was pointed out several times by Travis Mages that when you cross the abyss, this is, and you can get this information in Mystical Kabbalah by Dion Fortune, Ladder of Lights by William G. Gray, Cabalistic Symbolism by Gareth Knight. When you cross the abyss, you lose that individuality of self, and actually that signifies the fact that you're not, if you cross it and survive, you're not coming back. So I think that's what's being kind of like stressed here, because Binah shows the expulsion from the Garden of Eden to earth, but it also represents a path back. And so I'm gonna read that last part again when it says, while the sword is rarely found in this Tarot key, it is very common in alchemical representations of the same theme as, for example, in the 11th key of Basilius Valentius, the 17th century alchemist. In his illustrations are two female twins, each mounted on a lion and holding a figure of the sun and of the moon. Behind them is a man in armor, another meaning of Zane, and holding a sword. The caption reads, the twins, sun and moon, are united by the conjunction which seems to be death. So understand that the consummation of this marriage requires a death. Indeed, to successfully pursue this path across the abyss, across the abyss means the death even of one's own higher self, the absolution of ego. It is willful and total self-destruction and immersion into the divine. The separation and reintegration of the dual components of the manifest self demands subordination of the ego to the one divine principle. So I was right when that hit me as the absolution of the ego. I challenge you to meditate on losing. See, we think of the ego as the enemy, but the ego also contains huge aspects of your personality. What makes you you. Everybody thinks of transition, and not everybody, but those on this path think of, when I make the transition, I'm gonna become a god and I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna be somewhere in the ethers being me. But can you imagine ascending to that height and no longer being you? Matter of fact, the death of everything you think that makes you you. You're now something more. You are not who you think you are. You have now become who you think you are. I challenge you just to meditate on that. I challenge you because I have, and I'll be honest, initially, I won't say it was frightening, but I kind of flinched away because I like who I am, right? If I don't got to come back no more, if I can ascend the tree, I want to take all this ism that I represent up to the supernal triad and say, hey, God, you need a dose of this in your life, right? But to cross the abyss represents a death of sorts. And that death is going to be the higher self, the higher aspects of you. And so it says, where am I? We'll read that. The separation and reintegration of the dual components of the manifest self demands subordination of the ego to the one divine principle. The sword destroys utterly those who will travel across the abyss. Now, the sword and the abyss is mentioned together because that's a part of that lightning path that you see in Kabbalah. That's actually a sword. And the only way to cross the abyss is on that sword. And so you would think that a sword, you think of it flat like this, but it's going to be on the razor's edge. So it's like death meeting you on three different sides. If you fall directly down, you get sliced in the middle. Fall to the left or right, you fall into the abyss. That's why the path of Da'ath is more akin to a tightrope than it is to a bridge or a road, or something where you can leisurely walk across. I believe it was in William G. Gray's book where he makes the illusion of the path, Da'ath, across the abyss. I keep saying abyss. Across the abyss, he likens that to like walking across fire. a fire walker or whatever. It says the sword destroys utterly those who will travel across the abyss. Thus is the path called the disposing intelligence. It is an experience which is the completion of the process begun on the path of smack, temperance. Taken together, temperance and the lovers are the alchemical formula of solve et coagula. So this is the work of Baphomet we're speaking of. The sword separates out, dissolves an activity which we have previously shown to mean analysis. This is followed by synthesis or reintegration in a new way, therefore solve et coagula. It can actually be quite intriguing to see how all of the complicated symbols of alchemy, lions, eagles, glutens, suns, moons, etc., reduced to some very basic psychological concept. But here again, we appreciate that such descriptive terms did not exist until the present day because these are living documents. So whatever was meant initially, it might have been an illusion, but it was not this. We now, it's the unfortunate who refers to it as the biological alchemist, where you can now relate these things to biological processes down to atomic levels, as he just mentioned, glutens, the sugars, these binding agents, right? Can't think of the word. And I was thinking of the people who are diabetic. There's a word about the sugars I wanted to make a point of, but I couldn't recall it. But either way, I want to keep moving because keep on slipping. And I was gonna give away a book in this session, but I gotta wrap this up. Like a safe sex commercial, so we're gonna keep it pushing. It can actually be quite intriguing to see how all of the complicated symbols of alchemy, lions, eagles, glutens, suns, moons, etc., reduced to some very basic psychological concepts. But here again, we appreciate that such descriptive terms did not exist until the present day, and we are forced to interpret the codes of the early Kabbalists, of Mathers, of Waite, and even of Crowley. So that's showing that in their day, those who we read, even down to Waite, who I personally hold accountable for how he chooses to dispense the information he knew, we still actually know more than he knows. So that's how we're able to bridge these gaps, whether it's with several books or through meditation as well. It says, and in the lovers, this requisite decipherment of language is especially difficult. Crowley, in fact, stated that the lovers and temperance were the most difficult cards of the tarot, which is certainly true. The path of temperance requires a complete integration of the personality in its subordination to the ego in Tiferet. The path of the lovers requires a complete integration of the totality of the self manifest in the microprosopos for the return of the soul to the aspect of the garden from which it emerged. In basic terms, temperance is the balance of the lower self. The lovers is the balance of the higher self. And by comparison with the Waite and Golden Dawn cards, Crowley's lovers is intellectually superior. Certainly no version of the lovers has ever before been more daringly explicit in revealing the secret of the path. So that's where we have the have to respect like the Crowleys, the people who throw tradition to the wind in some aspects, who are unconcerned about obligation to oaths in terms of societies when they feel a higher calling or obligation to a higher calling or higher aspect of self. And so it says here, Excuse me. It says, by comparison with the weight and golden dawn cards, Crowley's lovers is intellectually superior. Certainly no version of the lovers has ever been more daringly explicit in revealing the secret of the path. What is shown here is the royal marriage, the Hieros Demos, of opposites, presided over by the hooded figure who is at once the hermit and the personification of Mercury. Above the figures of Eve and Lilith, with Cupid aiming an arrow symbolizing the wheel. The marriage takes place between the Black King and the White Queen. He wears a gold crown, bears a lance, and is attended by the Red Lion. His black child, interchanged with the White Queen's child, holds the base of the king's lance in one hand and a club in the other. She is attended by the White Eagle and her white child, who carries flowers in one hand and supports the base of the grail in the other. In the lower section of the card is the winged Orphic egg, the very essence of life itself, which is the product of this union. Perhaps the most curious assertion made by Crowley about this card, for which he gives no basis whatsoever, is that in some original form it presented the story of creation. He claims that at the center of the card was Kyne, shown having just slain Abel. This is depicted as at some length in the Equinox. Although a reference to bloodshed may seem out of place in a card of marriage, we are told that the shedding of the blood of the brother is the very key to the lovers. Now remember, that's what he said, the brothers, the lovers, the brothers. He was speaking of Cain and Abel, but that would have to, even though Cain and Abel were not twins, but that would have to be in reference to Castor and Pollux. I got this new book on Babylonian mythology, astrology. I'm going to look it up. Excuse me. Crowley elaborates on this idea in a footnote wherein he explains that the bloody sacrifice is not necessarily black magic. He says one should assume into one's own being ceremonially the whole karma of the creation of the creature slain. But the process is not to be viewed as a unique, singular experience. But Crowley tells us that the integration of the card can only be regained by repeated marriages, identifications, and some sort of hermaphroditism. So it's a repeated process. It's a spiral, undoubtedly. So the process is one which is both reciprocal and repeated over and over again. First, one brother dies and is absorbed into the other. Then there is a return to a balance of opposites, after which the second brother is killed and absorbed into the first. The process is defined by the infinity sign of Mercury/magician, since the sun and moon unite under Mercury. And this makes sense because I've found that as I've grown, there's always been a death to my former self. And then there's this synthesis, this amalgamation, and then there's this separation again, and then there's the death, synthesis, amalgamation, separation. So it's definitely a repeated cycle that I've seen in my life. Insofar as the marriage occurs repeatedly, the use of the number 12 in both the Waite and Golden Dawn cards is highly significant. In Waite's card, the tree of life behind the male figure holds 12 flames. In the Golden Dawn card, there are 12 points on the star of Perseus's shield. 12 is both, the 12 in both cases refer to the zodiac and the perfection of each of the types of incarnation. Theoretically, return to the Godhead requires that we incarnate repeatedly and perfect each of these types in turn. That I've heard numerous times. Even Samuel Onweor talks about how many, I think he says that you reincarnate like 12 times in each sign, just so you can perfect it. And if you don't, according to him, you lose everything. Your soul basically starts anew. loses all aspects and memories of previous incarnations and starts over and repeats the cycle. As a marriage of the king and queen under a floating cupid, the lovers relates to the chemical wedding of Christian Rosencreutz, okay, Rosicrucianism, written at the beginning of the 17th century. This is a work which, like the Fama Fraternitas, is one of the key documents of Hermetic Kabbalism. And unlike so many alchemical texts, the chemical wedding is immensely readable, having the charming qualities of a fairy tale, easier to seep into the subconscious that way. Yet is remains it should be yet it remains one of the most profound pieces of esoteric symbolism ever written. Those who read the text, meditate on it, will gain exceptional insights into both the lovers and temperance. Remember, the lovers and temperance, two aspects that form one, and they coalesce in the Baphomet. One such insight relates to the suggestion that blood is spilled on this path. There are, in fact, a number of events at the chemical wedding which reinforces this idea. That reminds me of the bloody wedding in Game of Thrones, right? Although some of your favorite characters got slaughtered, it was actually necessary for the story to progress forward. Now we're going to go into Paul Foster cases. Can I get the image in there somehow, some way? Paul Foster cases, the tarot, a key to the wisdom of ages. I'm going to go to the lovers. And it says here, key 6 lovers, Zane, Z, value 7, which means sword or weapon, suggesting the antithesis of Vav, the nail, because a sword cleaves, cuts, divides, separates. Diversity, contrast, antithesis, distinction, and therefore discrimination are some of the related ideas. Because remember, the Hierophant was a nail, a hook, it was a binding. It was something that brought two things together, right? Discrimination implies nice perception, acuteness, sharpness like a sword's edge, sagacity, and so on. Smelling is the sense attributed to Zane in the Book of Formation. The sense of smell has been always associated with keen perception and sagacity. An old Kabbalistic maxim says, properties are discerned by the nose. Our everyday speech has a number of phrases like smell out to suggest approach to truth. Yeah, because nobody knows like your nose knows, and your nose sure knows a lot, things like that. East above the direction assigned to Zane is the line bounding the eastern side of the top of the cube of space and joining the top face above. Let's find the cube. And then can we enlarge the sucker? There we go. So east above is the lovers right there. You see number 6, lovers. And that is, let me get back to the good part. Let's go to the double image. Let me move this up and out the way a little taste. All right. So I got the 2 cards up as opposed to having the 3 different angles. East above the direction assigned to Zane is a line bounding the eastern side of the top of the cube of space. Now let's go back to the cube of space. We're going to stay on it for a minute. Get out the way. Let's get it as big as we can get it. Okay. And join the top face above Mercury to the eastern face, East Venus. This line, moreover, joins the top vertical line, Northeast emperor to the top vertical line, southeast Hierophant. So we see the connection and the continuation, right? The combination of east and above suggests the working together of subconscious power of creation, creative imagination, and the self-conscious power of acute discrimination. Gemini, the twins, the zodiacal sign attributed to Zane. The name of this sign suggests duality, division, other ideas related to the meaning of the letter. It is difficult to tell twins apart, and to do so requires nice discrimination. I know that because my brother-in-law can never tell my twins apart, and I know they look nothing alike. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, key 1, the magician, sometimes personified in Egyptian mythology as a jackal-headed Anubis, representing discernment, sagacity, and sagacity because of the jackal's keen sense of smell. Gemini governs the lungs, collarbones, shoulders, arms, and hands in all parts. Gemini people are said to be given to inquiry, investigation, and experimentation. And today my son was real experimenting. My son's a Gemini. They often engage in mental pursuits. In our color scale, Gemini is represented by orange. The corresponding musical tone is D natural. Gemini is a common sign of the airy triplicity. Disposing intelligence is the mode of consciousness assigned to the letter Zane. To dispose is literally to place apart, to arrange, to distribute, to apportion, to divide. Thus, analysis, which is the solve that Robert Wang spoke of. Remember this card, the lovers and the temperance card referred to solve et coagula. Analysis, what was that? Thus, analysis implied by the meanings of the letter name sword, classification, organization, preparation, and adjustment are all related to this mode of consciousness. This it is which shows itself in our disposition, and one's disposition can be modified by right discrimination. The lovers is the more usual title. Some pseudo-occultists call this picture the two paths, and say older versions of the symbolism show a man standing between two female figures representing virtue and vice. This is wholly erroneous. In old exoteric versions of Tarot, there are three figures, a youth and a maiden, facing a crowned woman. These are the Cabalistic son and bride combined with the Cabalistic mother or queen. The design, aside from its deeper meaning, has obvious reference to marriage. The title intimates the union of opposites but complementary modes of existence. It is also closely related to disposing intelligence, disposition, affections, temperament, idiosyncrasies, propensities. All these are related to the word love, as well as to the occult meaning of key 6. Our version is essentially the same as Dr. Waite's, and both are based on the unpublished esoteric tarot. We have been at some pains to clarify certain minor obscurities, but otherwise the symbolism is the same. The sun overhead has the same general significance as that behind the fool. It is the great light source, the dynamo of radiant energy, whence all creatures derive their personal forces. Here it is yellow or golden instead of white to show that it is our day star, the actual physical sun, whence we draw not only energy and life, but also, say, ageless wisdom, potential consciousness. The sun is not merely a center of physical force, a thing in the sky. It is the body of a being. The angel is Raphael, angel of air, the element attributed to Gemini, and in the symbolism of the Roman Church, the particular angel of the planet Mercury. He is also the great archangel of the eastern quarter of the heavens, east above. Here he represents super consciousness, and thus is related also to the fool. His airy nature is indicated by the color of his skin. The yellow we have associated with air and with Mercury. His, let's go back. We want the bolted that. So it says here, his airy nature is indicated by the color of his skin. We're talking about this, the archangel Raphael. His airy nature is indicated by the color of his skin. The yellow we have associated with air and with Mercury. His violet garment carries out the same idea because violet is the color complement of yellow. Another indication of his airy nature is the fact that he is supposed to be, he is supported by clouds. He is the cosmic life breath, prana, super consciousness. His influence descends on both figures below, streaming from his upraised hands. So that's breath. The clouds represents breath. Prana. And what's crazy is my son is a Gemini, and today we went school shopping, and he had to have black and yellow shoes. And he stated precisely that the yellow represents the sun. He wanted yellow on his shoes to represent the sun and Bumblebee from Transformers. The mountain in the background combines several meanings. Mountains are symbols of the above of the gods. Consider Sinai, Olympus, Meru, Fujiyama. Again, they suggest climbing, aspiration, the possibility of attainment. We all have peaks to climb and the incentive to action. The disposing elements in our consciousness, which leads to volition, has always in the background this idea of climbing above our present level. Thus, the mountain represents what alchemists call the great work. Again, a mountain is often a phallic symbol of pregnancy or gestation, suggesting preparation, organization, and like ideas we have already developed in connection with the letter Zayn. The man at the right of this key is Adam, namer of things and the tiller of the soil. He is also the magician of the tarot. Behind him is a tree bearing 12 fiery fruits. These are the signs of the zodiac, and each flame is triple. It says, because astrologers subdivide every sign into 3 parts or decants. Thus, the tree behind the man is a tree of human life, and its fruits represent the 12 main types, the 36 subtypes, personality or self-conscious life expression. The woman at the left is Eve. She is also the high priestess and the empress. Behind her is a tree of knowledge of good and evil. It bears 5 circular fruits, the 5 senses. Up the tree climbs a serpent of sensation, because temptation arises from subconscious memory of sensation or from suggestions based thereon. The serpent is also a symbol of wisdom and redemption. Moses' serpent in the wilderness, because wisdom and liberation result from the right adaptation, the very forces which at first tempt us into mistaken action. That might explain why they raised the serpent to heal people, because it tempted you into doing the wrong thing, but it's also your salvation in terms of kundalini energy, etc. Thus, Dr. Waite said the suggestion in respect of the woman is that she signifies that attraction towards the sensitive life, which carries within it the idea of the fall of man, but she is rather the working of a secret law of providence than a willing and conscious temptress. It is through her imputed lapse that man shall rise ultimately, and only by her can he complete himself. In practical psychology, the lesson of the picture is plain. The woman looks towards the angel, the man towards the woman. The self-conscious intellectual mind, although it is the determining factor in personal consciousness, does not become directly aware of superconsciousness. Self-consciousness, as the symbolism of Key 1 shows, does not receive and transmit the power of superconsciousness. But conscious awareness of the nature of those powers comes from careful observation of the activities of subconsciousness. Powers are developed within, and the subconscious within is the woman. From that within, they are educated or drawn forth in response to self-conscious impulses, and their manifestation is in the field of self-consciousness, the without. So it's almost like this tarot card represents the act of meditation prior to activity. Development comes by response of the inner to the outer. It is the result of woman to man that peoples the world. It is the response of the interpreting subconsciousness to the observing self-consciousness that peoples the thought world. Wait, let's go back. It is the response of the interpreting subconsciousness to the observing self-consciousness that peoples the thought world with ideas. Because remember, Kabbalistically, we are like emanations from a thought form of God. The tree of life is a thought form created from God's thoughts, and we're like emanating from that thought form. So we're the echo of a thought, or what we consider reality. If that applies here, but it struck me. Let me read that again. It is the response of the interpreting subconsciousness to the observing self-consciousness that peoples the thought world with ideas. This is a basic law of mental development. Its constructive operations depends on the discriminative exercise of self-conscious powers. Personal happiness, health, and success depend on harmonious cooperation of these two modes of mental activity to secure this harmony. We must understand that both are expressions of a power superior to either. We must see also that the subconscious is the mode which, in response to suggestions originated and framed by self-consciousness, brings us into personal relationship with this superior power. Man, this is actually, I see the connection to the Garden of Eden, self-consciousness, superconsciousness, and I can feel the beginnings of a new interpretation of that Garden of Eden story where Eve tempted Adam. Where Eve was tempted by the serpent, and then after she committed, she convinced Adam. The subconscious is from the, how did they put it here? The outer to the inner, or was it inner to the outer? Let me find that real quick. It's been over here on the page. So the within, it says powers are developed within. Oh, here we go. It says powers are developed within, and the subconscious within is the woman. From that within, they are educated or drawn forth in response to self-conscious impulses, and their manifestation is in the field of self-consciousness, the without. So the woman represents the within. And then it goes on to say, development comes by response of the inner to the outer. Let's carry on. Personal happiness, health, and success depend on harmonious cooperation of these two modes of mental activity. To secure this harmony, we must understand that both are expressions of a power superior to either. We must see also that the subconscious is the mode which, in response to suggestions originated and framed by self-consciousness, brings us into personal relationship with this superior power. Furthermore, the relationship between self-consciousness and subconsciousness should be one of loving intimacy. Hence, the two figures are nude. They veil nothing from each other. This is not the state of affairs with most people. Too often, self-consciousness and subconsciousness are not on speaking terms. True that, true that. Self-awareness and self, that's why so many people have problems interpreting their own dreams. Consciously, we accept this or that idea. Subconsciously, we seek the realization or
I have.
come on, bud. I'm almost done, okay? You come out the room talking. Let me just finish up, okay? It's all good. Consciously, we accept this or that idea. Subconsciously, we seek the realization of its opposite. Come on, bud. I know this is your routine. I know I'm intruding right now, but just give me a little more time, okay? Just need about 15 more minutes. Says too often self-consciousness and subconsciousness are not on speaking terms. Consciously, you know what, buddy? I apologize to you. I'm in your way. This is what you do. Do your thing, okay? I just need about 15 more minutes. You can stay out here. What you gonna do?
I was planning on taking my medicine. I could have just took it at 6:15.
Okay, you want to chill out here with me or you want to go back to your room? It's up to you, okay? I'm almost done.
I'm gonna go in the room.
All right. I apologize, bud.
Yes, but I'll give you some time.
That's all good. You don't have to give me no time. It's all good, man. It's all good.
Yeah, you got plenty of time.
Exactly. That's my feelings exactly. Got plenty of time. So, it's all good. I apologize to you. I was kind of snapping on you. It ain't that serious. It ain't that serious. All right. Consciously, we accept this or that idea. Subconsciously, we seek the realization of its opposite. To correct this error, to establish harmony between these two phases of personality, is to have clear, unmixed, unadulterated desires. That's the whole, that sums up all of magical workings. To correct this error, to establish harmony between these two phases of personality is to have clear, unmixed, unadulterated desires. Again, since love is the ideal relation between the two modes of consciousness, this picture warns us against any attempt to bully or coerce subconsciousness. Persuade subconsciousness and it will do anything for you. Endeavor to drive it harshly and you set into operation the law of reversed effort. Let's go back to what I was saying about setting myself up to fail at what I'm doing at my job and having faith in my higher self. So that you get a result just the opposite to that at which you aim. Discrimination then is the key to the establishment of happy cooperation between the two modes of personal consciousness. The burden falls on self-consciousness because it is the framer of suggestion. So self-consciousness frames a suggestion that you then float past the subconscious. The results are destructive. Oh no, it says the burden falls on self-consciousness because it is the framer of suggestion. If it be careless and lax in observation or harsh in driving and giving commands to subconsciousness, the results are destructive. On the other hand, If self-conscious intellect perceives the true relation among the three modes of consciousness as symbolized in key 6, it will be able to frame a series of suggestions which will make it the recipient of superconscious guidance through the agency of subconsciousness. All that is necessary is to formulate suggestions embodying the idea that subconsciousness can and does receive the influence from above, that it can and does reflect that influence to the self-consciousness. Frame suggestions like these in words of your own. Study the picture and find words to express its meaning in a formula of auto-suggestion. Your own words are best and have the most power. You will be amazed and delighted with the results. Wow. Paul Foster Case wrapped that up superbly. He gave up the game on how to manifest. And he dropped it so sublimely just in the last paragraph. He says all that is necessary is to formulate suggestions embodying the idea that subconsciousness can and does receive the influence from above, and that it can and does reflect that influence to self-consciousness. As above, so below, with subconsciousness as the medium. Frame suggestions like these in words of your own, which is why I got my own way that I talk to myself, which is why I correct myself when I deviate in a not so positive manner from how I should be speaking to myself. Study the picture and find words to express its meaning in a formula of auto-suggestion. Auto-suggestion means it's on autopilot, it's on subconscious mode. You don't even have to consciously think about it. The way you get that to happen is by repetition and symbols. Tarot card is a symbol. Repetition could be making you a symbol, a sigil, something of that nature. I'm going to wrap it up here. Next week, we will be motivating on to the chariot. Chariot is Cancer. So I'll be catching up with Leo soon. I'm just setting up. Okay. Let me get this screen minimized, and guess we could do somewhat of a wrap up of this disposing intelligence, the fact that it's associated with the sense of smell and the sword, Mars and Venus, Mercury. Paul Foster Case once again came through in the clutch with the no look pass, giving up the keys to the kingdom. We have some good correspondences to look up. Temperance, Solve et Coagula was mentioned as the alchemical terms. The chemical wedding was mentioned. Heros Gamos. I have not been disappointed so far in my studies of the tarot. Hopefully me being impressed for time and even getting short with my buddy, with my son, hopefully none of that interfere with your work or you observing me work. Because in the end, I'm not going to even say I'm a human having a spiritual experience. You know, sometimes you got to revel in your humanity, right? And have faith in your higher self, which I think is the topic that I'm going to take tonight into the week when I contemplate the Lover's card. You know, we see Adam, the namer, the tiller of the field. He's looking at the woman. The woman's focused on the archangel, that divine influence on Mercury, on bringing about that synthesis from as above to so below, and bringing it right here, manifesting those polarities in your life. So again, thank you for spending this time with me. Occult Topics with the Professor. If you haven't already, I'm going to suggest that you get a copy of my book, The Occult Meaning of Masonry, Its Symbols, and the Chakra System by the Professor. You can get it at pillarbookpublishing.com. Catch me on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook, Michael Bell. Instagram, I am underscore who underscore I think underscore I am. Got the same profile picture. If it's not the same, it'll be a picture of my face. Get you a copy of this book. I'm getting ready to drop the workbook. And while it won't deal specifically with tarot, I will drop some of the jewels that can be related or connected. And with that having been said, thank you again for spending this time with me. I don't know how long we've been on here talking. Let's take a look. I don't know how long we've been going, but we've been doing it. And so thank you very much. Enjoy. And in about a week, we'll be getting down again on the chariot card. So peace.